The Hankey family is in a season right now. They are in a season of praying, of waiting, and of trusting God to restore Annie back to full health. And as a church family, we get to join with them. We get to come alongside them as we pray with them. And in a small way, as a church family, we get to kind of help shoulder the burden of the season that they're traveling through. There's a seriousness and even a bit of apprehension that we feel in a time like this. And it ought to be that way, because this is a weighty matter that requires a serious tone. Just last Saturday, there was a different tone felt on this campus. My son was married here on this very stage, and I was blessed to be able to officiate the ceremony. My family felt just an overwhelming sense of joy as we watched Josiah and Josie state their vows to each other before God and before their family and friends. The Poush family is in a season of celebration, new beginnings, and incredible thankfulness. And the joy that we felt on that day was enhanced by the way that our church family loved us and served us on the wedding day. That was a festive time, and it ought to have been that way, because a wedding is a time of celebration that requires a cheerful tone. 1 week, two very different seasons of life. One serious and weighty, the other cheerful and uplifting. Neither more important than the other, but both carefully overseen, managed, and superintended by a sovereign God who cares deeply about the seasons of life that his children experience. King Solomon is noted as being the wisest man who ever lived. And at the end of his life, he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, which I believe are his personal memoirs, chronicling the lessons that he learned about the meaning of life and the way that we ought to live under the rule and reign of a sovereign God. Today we're going to look at the third chapter, and hopefully we will glean some of the wisdom that he has for us today. Chapter 3, verse 1 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. A time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in his time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end." Now, some of you may have started humming a song as you were reading along with me, and that's okay. This passage of scripture was hijacked by the Byrds, who turned it into a popular folk song called "Turn, Turn, Turn." For them, these words became lyrics to shape an anti-war protest. But for us, the church, these words are a clarion call to walk through the ever-changing seasons of life with an eternal perspective. Because without it, we are subject to confusion, despair, and disappointment. Solomon starts out this poetic passage by focusing our attention on the pattern of God's design. He says there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. Solomon has an important point that he wants to make. So he uses a term that everyone is familiar with. He uses the concept of seasons to lay a foundation for his main point. Now, having just celebrated Thanksgiving, many of you have begun the transition to the Christmas season. Now, this is actually a spirited debate in our culture. Do you have to wait for Thanksgiving to end before you can start to prepare for Christmas? See, yeah, I know y'all have your opinions. I know that. And it is spirited because you feel this emotion strongly. I know this. But here's the deal. We instinctively know that a transition must take place. It's just a matter of when one season starts and the other ends. So your tree may already be up. Some of you may have lights on your house. Our neighbors just put an inflatable Grinch in their front yard. And as a church, you can tell we have begun that seasonal transition with our decor. We sang some Christmas-themed music, and we lit our first Advent calendar. If you light an Advent calendar, that is different. That will bring in a season of fire. We lit an Advent candle. Now, not only are there holiday seasons that change throughout the year, but there are also 4 natural seasons that we are lucky enough to experience here in the Pacific Northwest. We are at the tail end of fall, meaning that we are about to enter into winter. That will eventually give way to spring, which will ultimately turn to summer. These seasons aren't random. They aren't haphazard. They never happen out of order. And they don't sneak up on us or surprise us. Rather, we expect them. We even anticipate them. The seasons are cyclical and ordered because they're set in place by an intelligent designer who orders our environment in such a way that it holds together perfectly. Each season is set in place for a purpose, and it follows an appointed sequence, and every season carries with it a beauty that is unique to its appointed time. Fall has the beautiful leaves, winter has the mesmerizing snowfall, spring has the budding flowers, and summer the radiant sunshine. In the same way that nature follows an appointed pattern, Solomon teaches us that there is a rhythm to the seasons of life that are also part of God's divine plan. In verses 2 through 8, Solomon lists 14 pairs of events or seasons that we all must face in life. 28 activities in total, covering the full spectrum of the human experience. Now, honestly, some of the experiences that Solomon lists are pleasant things that we might look forward to. Things like birth and laughing and dancing and building things, love and peace. These are all things that we might anticipate with great expectation. But there are also some heavy things that we might want to try to avoid. Things like death, weeping, mourning, and war. These life events are real, they're raw, and they evoke an emotional response. And maybe some of you even touched some of those emotions as I read through them because they resonated with you. And they're supposed to. Solomon wants you to feel something as you process these experiences. As we read through them, they may appear to be opposites or even contradictions. Birth is the opposite of death. Building up is the opposite of tearing down. Gathering stones is the opposite of scattering them. My friends, I'd like to suggest today that these are not contradictions to each other, but instead they are complementary to each other. They are not at odds with one another. One is not to be sought after and the other to be avoided. Rather, they are a natural part of the order and the cyclical rhythm that God designs for our seasons of life, in the exact same way that springtime brings life from the seemingly barren harshness of winter. All of life's events complement each other because they have an appointed purpose. Now, this is critical to understand, because if we don't value each season, if we don't see the purpose behind each one of these 28 life events, we can take one of two unhealthy paths. On one hand, we can avoid a season because it seems unpleasant. Or on the other hand, we can get stuck in a season because we get comfortable there and we simply don't know how to move forward. What do I mean by that? Let's take grief or mourning. Over the years, I have watched many people try to skip over that season of life and rush to the more preferable season of laughing and dancing. They don't want to process their grief, so they just try to ignore it and pretend that that season just simply doesn't exist. I mean, weeping and mourning sounds like such a bummer, doesn't it? I mean, who wants to be sad and cry all the time? Isn't laughing and dancing more pleasurable and to be sought after? We can understand that line of thinking, right? We can all empathize with a hurting person. And we can understand their attempt to avoid the unpleasant season of grief. It makes sense, right? Or does it? Let's look at that line of thinking another way. Who among us would ever think it's reasonable to skip the season of winter in order to quickly move to spring? I mean, winter's cold. It's gloomy. It's dark. It's hard for some of us to drive in the snow. Spring is way better. So let's just pretend the season of winter doesn't exist. Let's hurry and get to the good season of spring, because birds chirp, flowers bloom, spring training ushers in the beginning of baseball season. Spring is just better than winter, right? My friends, it's utterly foolish to think that we could stand out on our front porch and shake our fist at winter and instantly usher in springtime. We wouldn't do that with the natural order of things, but we do it when it comes to things like grief and mourning, or frankly, any of the life activities that are along the left-hand column of those 7 verses. We don't prefer those seasons, so we shake our fist at them, or we stuff those emotions deep into our soul and we just fake it. And if I could be candid with you for just a second, that painted-on smile fools no one. And it's not good for you to paint on a smile. Why? Because God has set perfectly these seasons in their perfect order. He has set them in place and He holds them together in perfect balance. Your season of mourning matters. So grieve. Feel the depth of your sorrow. Cry out to God. Lament. Let the season take its course so that you can heal and gain the strength that you need to meet the next appointed season. Now, not only do some people try to fast forward or skip over unpleasant seasons, sometimes they also can dwell in the same spot for too long. This too can be unhealthy because that person is unable to turn the emotional page that ushers them into the next season of life. I've seen this happen as well. Someone may feel the pain of losing grandpa, and they feel it so deeply that they wrongly conclude that if they were to ever laugh or dance, they would somehow dishonor his memory. It won't dishonor grandpa's memory, but failing to move from one season to the next does dishonor God's rhythm. Your self-focused grief can take the place of a God-focused lament. If you dwell in the same spot for too long, grief becomes a personal prison rather than a temporary season, and you miss the dance that God has prepared for you. What season are you in? Which of these 28 life experiences resonated with you? Are you in a season of planting? Maybe you're starting a new job, raising young kids, or building a new ministry. Are you in a season of uprooting? Maybe you're getting ready to move to a new town, start a new job, or maybe you are in the process of ending an unhealthy relationship. You planning for retirement? Starting the empty nest phase? Are you grieving the pain of a prodigal? Or are you maybe experiencing the blessing of welcoming one home? Remember, regardless of whatever season you are in, those seasons are appointed by God, and He sees you. In your sorrow, He is there. In your laughter, He is there. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, He is sovereign over the season that you're in. So dwell there. Let the season run its appointed course, because this too shall pass. And I don't say that as some trite, pithy cliche. I say it because there's a significant theological truth to it. This too shall pass. In your greatest moment of joy, savor it, because that mountaintop season will come to an end. And in your lowest moment of grief and sadness, hold on tight, because it won't last forever. A better day is coming. And how do I know that's true? Why do I say that? It's not just because I'm an optimist. I say that a better day is coming because verse 11 exists. Look at what verse 11 says. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has made everything beautiful in its time. In the Hebrew, the word beautiful means fitting, appropriate, and perfectly suited. God takes any and all of these 28 life experiences and He perfectly harmonizes them. He fits them together and makes them beautiful. The balance of life's rhythms fit perfectly together. But in order to realize that, we have to see them as part of a grand story that is bigger than our limited experience or our limited vision. Imagine that these 28 life events that Solomon identifies are 28 puzzle pieces that are scattered out on the table. If you were to reach out and pick one puzzle piece up and look at it, it may look like nothing more than an irregular, misshapen piece of cardboard. One puzzle piece looks odd alone, but when placed in its proper order, it is fit beautifully and perfectly together, and a picture comes into perfect focus. You see, God sees the finished puzzle, perfectly fitted together and made beautiful in its time. We just see the puzzle pieces that may seem disjointed or disconnected. Put another way, imagine 28 musicians with an instrument in their hand. If they were to play those instruments haphazardly and out of rhythm, they would create nothing more than a cacophony of discordant noise. However, with a musical score to look at and a conductor to lead them, the sound from those 28 instruments will fit together perfectly, making a beautiful sound of harmony. What's the promise for us to cling to today? It's this. Even during the painful seasons, like sickness, loss, or waiting, our lives are being beautifully orchestrated to fit together by a sovereign God who created us, who loves us, and who knows what's best for us. That sounds great, but there's a challenge. There's a challenge for each one of us. Verse 11 goes on to say, He has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. What does that mean? What does that mean to have eternity set in the human heart? Well, it means that God has given each one of us an instinct, a longing, a desire to connect with our Creator. This is a universal longing that every human being has imprinted on them. It's an instinct that causes us to grope for answers to life's most meaningful questions. And it's also the very thing that makes us human. I have never seen a German shepherd ponder the meaning of life. It's something that God has imprinted into us to cause us to seek answers to life's questions. That's why we ask, where did I come from? Where will I go when I die? What is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of the season that I am enduring? See, we all have a desire to know what God is up to, because this eternal longing is hardwired into mankind so that we would seek Him for the answers to what may seem discordant and disconnected in our lives. But no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We want to understand God and His purpose and His plan for us, but sometimes all we see are those random puzzle pieces that just don't seem to fit together. That's why the faithful Christian sometimes wonders, why in the world are my wife and I struggling with infertility when everyone else in our community group keeps having babies? When will my boss ever recognize how hard I work and give me that promotion that I deserve? Or why does it feel like I am in a perpetual season of winter? Will I ever feel sunlight on my face again? These questions vex us because we only see the season that we're in and maybe the season that just passed behind us. We are confined by time and space, so we can only see what is in front of us. But God sees the symphony. God sees our entire life as if He's looking at it from beginning to end all at once. He sees that entire musical score, each instrument, and He is masterfully crafting all things to work together to make that beautiful life melody. Does your life seem out of tune today? Well, trust the composer, because He will make all things beautiful in their time. He will cause all things to fit together in a way that is exceedingly abundantly greater than anything you could have ever hoped or imagined. He has a purpose and a plan that He is methodically unfolding right in front of you. So let it resolve. Let the rhythm of life play out. Trust the process and invite your church family into your season. There's a reason why God uses metaphors like flock and army and family to describe the church. It's because we're pack animals. We're not lone wolves. We were built for community. My friends, there's safety in the presence of the flock. There is healing and there is wisdom to be found when you invite others to help you process your season. And the laughing, the dancing, and the building is so much more fun when there are others to celebrate with you. The Bible is full of verses that use the term one another, love one another, pray for one another, spur one another on, confess your sins to one another, serve one another. We cannot be obedient to any of these commands if we live our lives in isolation. Just a little while later in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon will say, "Pity the man who falls down and has no one there to lift him up." He's talking about the importance of living through life seasons in the context of community, because we are stronger together and we need one another to stand with us through the seasons of life. Seasons come and seasons go. The good times won't last forever, and neither will the hard times. The circle of life begins with birth and it ends with death. And in between, there are times of peace and there's times of war. There are times that you need to uproot and move on. And there's times that you need to put down roots and stay put. We can count on seasons to constantly change in our lives. And through it all, we can count on one thing that will never change. God is sovereign over every season. The natural order of our universe is held together by a design that astonishes the most brilliant astrophysicist and cosmologist. God is sovereign over the laws of nature, and he holds every atom together because he's the one who created it all. And the very same God who spoke the entire universe into existence also holds your life together by his masterful, creative design. The same God who spoke the heavens into existence, who put the stars in place, who calms storms and walks on water, that same God holds your very life in his hands. And he is sovereign over every season of your life. God is not surprised by the season you're in. He prepared you for it. God is present with you in the season. He left heaven to move toward you, and he promises to walk through every season with you. And God is not finished with your season of life. Every single day, the divine composer is crafting your life into a musical masterpiece. Note by note, he is building toward a crescendo where you too will see beyond the season and the symphony will finally make sense. Claim those truths today. Because whether you are praying by a hospital bedside or dancing at a wedding, trust that God is sovereign over every season of your life.